So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today as well on the podcast. And you've been sort of a health consultant for a while now, and you've been diving into the world of health for a long time now. But through my own journey as well, I know Chris's journey, we've done, probably haven't done as much deep research of you as you've done into health, but we've done quite a bit. But through our own understanding, of health, it's changed a lot through the years. I mean, has your understanding of what actually health means changed through your life?
Well, in one sense, yes, of course, but the basics are unchanged. I mean, when I see clients, for instance, I sort of start off at an elemental level. I'll be talking to them about, well, is the water that they're drinking pure, or has it been poisoned at some level? You know, has the water board put sewage in their water supply with all those second-hand drugs? You know, it's a good question to ask the water board, by the way. I ask them, you know, are you in the city? Are you breathing bad air or good air? Are you getting enough sunshine, which is vital to health, clearly? And is the food you're eating nice, or is it poisoned?
Yeah.
You know? And then from there on, everything's built around minerals. You know, if a tree is missing a vital mineral in a big strong wind, the tree can fall over, and we're exactly the same. You know, missing a mineral. So I go through with clients the various minerals, and then what are the deficiency symptoms of them to see whether they need them. And generally, it's remarkable how common a whole raft of deficiencies are, really simple, basic ones.
Yeah. What are some of the most deficiencies that you are seeing in a common thread amongst the people?
Well, the biggest common thread, I suppose, in the mineral world is low magnesium, and in the vitamin world, low vitamin C.
Vitamin C.
Low vitamin C. The reason being that vitamin C deteriorates very fast in food, and so, you know, there's the orange on the tree alive. You pick it, now it's in the process of dying, and in that dying process, minerals are fine because minerals are eternal; they last forever. But the vitamins start deteriorating fast. So by the time it's been flown from who knows where into the warehouse, into the supermarket, into your kitchen, then it sits there for a little bit longer before it gets eaten. How much of the vitamin content, the enzyme content, and so on is left in that food? Well, I've never done the testing except with a Brix meter. For about £10, you can buy what they call a refractometer Brix meter, and it's a little tiny sort of mono microscope you look through, and you put a few drops of, say, lemon juice, or you squeeze. You want to test how fresh, how vibrant is that tomato. Well, you squeeze a few drops of the tomato juice, put it in the little there's a little glass plate, you close it down, you look through it and you focus it, and you can tell how many bricks there are in fruit. And bricks is like a measurement of oxygen. That would be one way to describe it. It's a little bit more than that. But it's related to the sugar content and so on. So when you buy one of these food refractometers, then they come with a little instruction leaflet, and they'll show you what a good lemon might have a Brix of, let's say, 6, and a really good one 15, and then an excellent one 20, and so on. So you can literally tell that way. But why test? Because most food is old, and if it's been sprayed with Roundup, the pesticide by Monsanto, now taken over by Bayer, being one of the biggest nasty industries out there. How Monsanto's Roundup works is that it stops plants uptaking minerals. That's why all the weeds die, because it stops it. So what are they doing a few days before harvest, 8 days before harvest? A lot of the wheat farmers, and they're pressured into this by price and the supermarkets demanding lower prices. It's not that they want to. They overdose their own wheat plants, or whatever the plants are that are seed bearing, so that the plants wither and die, and they shrivel up on the way, so there's less wet mess to clear away, and all the remaining power of the plant goes into the wheat seed, and along with a megadose of the chemicals, and this is perfectly legal. So people eating that stuff are likely to have some pretty serious issues. So
it seems like a very complex scenario, to the fact of something to satisfy everyone, something to satisfy the consumer, the producer, and overall every single thing involved. Someone's going to have to give, whether it's going to be these companies like Roundup, they're going to have to like stop and slow down their process and let the organic farming commence a bit forward. Is there a simple answer to that problem, do you think?
Well, I was an organic farmer for 10 years, and I watched my neighbours have disasters. I was in southern Spain, and we were very small, but there were so few organic farmers around there that we supplied a fairly large area with a few certain glut times of year with oranges and so on. And but on one level, can you trust organic? So when I became an organic farmer, this is Spain, not England, they came, I contacted the organic people, I said I want to get registered, and they came round and they took my money and signed me up. So in the next 10 years, how many times did they come round to check I was doing it right? Never. They never came. Not once. Not once. So is it meaningful, the organic label? What is meaningful is the biodynamic label. You know, biodynamic being the sort of farming methods espoused by Rudolf Steiner, which he looked at what did the ancients do, what did our ancestors do, and we all know, I think, that our ancestors used the moon. You know, they'd harvest at full moon, plant at waning moon. You know, there were routines that they did to fertilize the soil and so on. So Steiner put together the idea of biodynamic gardening, and now there are lots of books about it, and there are one or two places in England where there are whole little towns practicing it, the biggest example of which is Forest Row in East Sussex. Forest Row is great. There are several organic farms, and there's a Steiner school there. And so what's the difference? The difference is that a biodynamic farmer is never going to think of using a chemical, because that's not the ethos of biodynamic farming. And whereas the organic guys have their overseeing agencies, biodynamic has their own, which is called Demeter, who was, I think, the Greek god of fruitfulness or something like that.
Oh.
And so my mum, when she was in her 80s, could, generally speaking, tell the difference between ordinary food and biodynamic food, because the difference was startling. And to give you an example, I speak as somebody who decided not to eat meat for 25 years. I now eat meat, but I might buy it from Tablehurst Farm, which is again down in Forest Row, where a chicken, unlike one of the Deathco or All Die supermarket chickens, costs $2.99 or $3.99. Down there it's $29.99 for a chicken. You get a big one for that, but $29.99 for a chicken. But when people taste it, it's like I've never tasted chicken like this ever in my life, unless they're old enough and they say, or they come from some remote third world place and they, oh yes, this is a real chicken. But kids these days, or young people, just don't know what they're missing. They don't understand that a chicken that's not been fed naturally, a chicken that's been fed naturally, which is pecking around outside, lots of insects, lots of different materials, runs like a healthy human, an alkaline body. But if you feed, as they do with modern agriculture, all the animals, whether it's cows, salmon, whatever, chickens, if you feed them the wrong type of food, like a lot of grains, they don't, we think of corn-fed chicken. No, they don't eat corn. Who are you trying to kid? So you feed the wrong substance to an animal, it's now not going to be well. Instead of being a healthy alkaline animal, it's going to be acidic. So as we, the healthy humans, now eat that acidic meat, that or the produce of an animal that wasn't really well, and it's going to change the acidity of our body. And our cells have a voltage powering them, and it's linked with the pH of the cells. And so people with cancer have an acidic pH. People who are healthy tend to have a more alkaline pH. You can't get too far the other way, but you get the idea. Yeah. So modern farming is poisoning everybody.
I wouldn't of course forget, because there's an interesting point there when you're talking about the pH level. By the way, there's so much in this. I've got about 5 points I wanted to rattle off. You said so much amazing stuff, honestly. But in regards to the pH levels, is there actually a way? Have you sort of got any sort of maybe tips or hints for people how to sort of regulate that to the correct levels?
Yeah. It's really easy. Now, the first thing is to ask oneself, what does pH stand for?
Yeah, that's good.
Right? Well, it stands for potential hydrogen. Right? So potential hydrogen. So why is that interesting? Well, hydrogen's the smallest atom. Most of your molecules, 99% of your molecules are H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. So that's 2 H2s to every O. Therefore, the question is, are you hydrogen? So is pH important because it's potential hydrogen? And so from there on, let's say you want to test your pH. Probably the best way to do it is first thing in the morning, before you do anything. If you take a pee, you can get pH strips, or you can get for about £10 a pH meter, and you stick it in the urine and you see what it is. And lots of people disagree as to what that number should be. Some people say it should be
7.8 I've seen, maybe.
Well, other people say
it's
much
very varied,
less.
isn't it?
You see, some people say it should be 6.5.
Oh, wow.
It's a really difficult one, and it's what I'm going to do is I'll put out a video. Can we break this for a second?
We don't actually break. We don't break.
You don't break. Okay, that's no problem.
Don't worry.
So I'm having a mental block on this, so I'm going to have to come back.
Don't worry. We have mental blocks all the time. I mean, even with that said, I mean, like you said there, you were open to the fact that you said it might be this, it might be that, because I think that's something I want to touch on you in regards to health, because in the first question I asked you in regards to health, I think health is a very sticky word, because the understanding I have about us as healthy beings that it's constantly changing. Like our bodies are evolving and constantly changing all the time. So I think certain things that basically what I'm trying to say is that everyone's different. So even the pH levels for someone else, their levels might be different to what I require, or to what you require, to what you require. That's what I'm seeing. Have you found that within health that it's very hard to, I know, like you said before, if you get back to the basics and you get back to the original methods, you're going to find sort of an equilibrium in that, or a balance point. But do you find that for many people, health is actually different for everyone?
Right, my mind is cleared now.
Yeah.
It's all about time of day.
Yeah.
Right. Some people say that 6.5 or over, higher being more alkaline, is where you should be. Other people say that it should be higher. But if you do it first thing in the morning, 6.5 or higher, and you can pat yourself on the back, I reckon. But there's no agreement there. But basically 7.3 is about the balance, and that's where people ought to be. But at different times of the day, there are huge advantages of being alkaline. There are huge advantages of being acidic in certain parts of the body at certain times. I mean, an example of that is to drink water with lemon juice in it first thing in the morning when you get up. And while it is by essence acidic, your body apparently reacts to that by going alkaline. And if you want to start yourself off really well with flushing your kidneys, flushing your gallbladder, flushing your kidneys in the morning, lemon juice in water is a good way to do it.
Yeah, there must be a balance between an alkaline-based diet and an acidic-based diet. Yeah, there must be a balance between the two, which can cause us to live optimally, and as such. There can't just be one better than the other.
Essentially, so people are so different in their diets and for how long they do them. For instance, a lot of people get a benefit from a vegan diet for a time.
Yeah.
But I know so many vegans who did it for too long, and they went from suddenly having this big clear out and feeling great to feeling weak. And I remember talking to a German medical doctor, cancer specialist, we were talking about diets, and I said, what do you think of vegan diet? And he said, well, I can spot the vegans and the vegetarians in the cancer ward. I said, well, how do you do that? He said, well, they're so weak compared to the others.
Wow. Yeah, how did they determine that?
Well, some people are strong and some people are weak. This is what the doctor said.
Just because I'm not trying to dig you out. I'm just because I know that through my experience. I mean, a long time ago, I did the bodybuilding. Just use that example, and on the outside, I looked healthy, but on the inside I wasn't healthy. So I just don't know how you'd be able to determine that by just visually looking at somebody. That's all.
I think as well, a lot of a vegan diet is lacking a lot of essential amino acids, which you can only get from meat. And the amino acids, like the building blocks for like strength through protein and stuff like that, and it breaks down the protein synthesis a lot easier in the body than a vegan diet would. So it's a lot more structurally sound, a meat-based diet than I would say a vegan diet was. But a vegan can still get these essential amino acids through supplementation and stuff like that.
Probably a question to ask as well. I mean, you said you were a vegan for 25 years.
No, I didn't eat meat.
Sorry.
Years.
Sorry, right, you didn't eat meat.
I ate everything else.
All right, cool. I mean, how did you, what was the change in mindset to do that, to go back to eating meat?
I gave up eating meat in mid chicken sandwich that I made myself, and it was delicious. And from one bite to the next, I couldn't do it. And it wasn't because of little fluffy chickens and my love of animals. It wasn't. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it was. Something weird came over me, because I only eat meat, chocolate and cheese, drank tea.
Yeah.
That was more or less it. Chocolate biscuits. And not entirely, but almost. And so I didn't know what to eat. I did not, but something in me wouldn't allow me to eat meat. For 25 years, didn't even fancy it.
Oh, wow.
Didn't fancy it. Then I was round at my dad's at Christmas Day, and he had this huge roast goose for Christmas dinner. I thought, that looks great. And I ate it, and it was great. And so now, if I trust the meat, I'll eat it if it's really good. I know somebody who shoots duck, so I've had some wild duck. That was fantastic. I've had some venison. Yeah. That was fantastic. But if it was grown in a farm in a nasty way, and my God, I wouldn't want to go anywhere near it.
It's interesting how in health, because I resonate with that story, because I had a very similar story where I stopped eating meat. I mean, at the minute now, I'm going for a period where the only meat that I'll eat is fish. And like you said, I don't know why I did it. It was just something inside, whatever it was, in a voice spoke to us and said, don't eat meat. But I think have you found that through your life that sometimes it's actually, you can have all the scientific research is good and things like that, but sometimes actually one of the best measures of your own health is actually just listening to your own intuition?
Well, as we know, all animals are intuitive. The dog gets sick, it goes out, finds the right type of grass or weeds and eats it. It's only us, our human animal, has lost the ability to know how to self-medicate, but we still do know at one level. Mm-hmm. I had a weird experience when I was 11, where I was out fishing, and it was in the Caribbean, and we had a glass bucket, so we could see the worm on the hook and the fish, and crystal clear, right? So the person I'm with is catching fish like mad. The fish aren't interested in the worm on my hook. We swap fishing rods. Immediately, I touch the fishing rod, all the fish that were swarming around just stop, look around, go to his one. And we could swap fishing rods all afternoon until I got sunstroke, and I never caught one fish. He caught 20 plus. So what was it? I was 11. I realized that they were reading my mind, the fish, because I hated putting the worm on the hook. It was a fly larva. It was really horrible. And I was dreading taking the hook, which was really barbed and nasty, out of the fish's mouth. I didn't want to hurt the fish. Now, the person I was with, he didn't care. He didn't care, and he was looking forward to eating them. And I watched as they were willingly sacrificing their lives to him and not to me.
Wow, that's amazing. What a very mindful communicative process with that fish, that they would avoid your line and go to someone else's.
Well, the thing is that what is the world? Well, actually, it's the great eating. Everything is eating something else. And eventually, when we die, fungus and bacteria and so on will do well for us. And so I had another experience about 15 years ago. At that point, I had a lie detector company, and it was software that worked over the telephone, voice analyzing. And it did a lot more than telling lies. You could tell all sorts of things. Anyway, I got in touch with America's most famous lie detector person. And he told me what had happened to him. I think it was in the 1970s, and they wrote books about this. He wired up his rubber plant in his office to the lie detector, and he was just thinking, I wonder what would happen if I picked up that pair of scissors and cut off a leaf when the plant reacted. Right? So he was the first one to prove that everything's got consciousness and there is just oneness, right? Wow. So then he does a lot more experiments with plants, and then he thinks, yogurt. So he gets some live yogurt, splits it into two, puts the probes of the lie detector in one pot, pours boiling water onto the other pot in another room, and the lie detector goes off with the yogurt that's fine. Then he took saliva out of people's mouths, put them on the fastest jet and flew them 600 miles or whatever, put the probes in the saliva, affected the person, and the saliva reacted. Right?
Oh, wow.
So that was then. Then about 10 years ago, they started doing experiments with fMRI scanners. And they'd, for instance, put somebody, say a woman who's in hospital in London, in the fMRI scanner, which will give you the brain in real time. Then they say to the mother, who's on another continent, think healing thoughts to your ill daughter now, and the daughter's brain would light up. So over and over, it's been proven that your thoughts have huge power. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking hatred towards somebody, or guilt or jealousy or whatever it is, not only do they pick it up, but they will be affected by it.
Yeah, I bought a story, by the way, and that's
really
and that's interesting because in regards to health as well, we sort of we give ourselves away, don't we? To like, say if you go to the doctors or something like that, the doctor will turn around, see if someone has ill. A lot of scenarios, the doctors will say that you've got no chance. Like there's many medical cases where people say, you've got no chance and things like that, and that's a very dangerous thing because I think when in a lot of medical areas, when people say that you haven't got a chance, there's something inside you that surrenders to you haven't got a chance. And like you were saying there about the power of the mind, like the power of the placebo, of how we know that we can heal ourselves and things like that. But if we surrender ourselves to somebody else saying that we can't do it, then that's a very dangerous thing. I mean, can you?
Oh, no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
If the doctor says you've got 6 weeks to live and you believe it, oh dear, you time your clock by it. But that's what happened to me 30 odd years ago.
Yeah.
I was so ill. After 3 weeks in hospital, the doctor said, well, it's hopeless. We don't know what's wrong with you and we can't fix you. But we can give you drugs, of course.
Mm-hmm. Don't know how they'll help you, but we can
give you drugs, yeah. Free too. And
make you happy.
Not necessarily. No, unfortunately not. But I worked out that I was low on minerals. I'd been reading. It's about the only thing I could do. I couldn't walk or dress myself, but I could read. Mm-hmm. And I figured out I was low on minerals. So I got taken out in a wheelchair, started taking minerals and vitamins and whatever. Stopped eating quite so many Mars bars and all the naughty stuff. And, I went from not being able to walk, not being able to dress myself, to being fine, basically, essentially.
Could I ask you a question? Did you think your mental clarity changed in that process as well?
Well, it's nothing like almost dying and not being able to walk and stuff to make you think a little bit more deeply about everything.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it was when you couldn't walk and you couldn't dress yourself? Do you think did that give you like the realization, or was it the process of recovery that helped alter your mind into health?
Well, I've had all sorts of experiences that have sort of woken me up. I never liked going to school or anything like that, so I tried not to. But I am proud of my O-level woodwork.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I didn't get that.
See, I tried. And but I used to like dissociative anesthetics rather than going to school. And so I'd leave my body frequently by disassociating using dissociative anesthetics. I had a stroke of luck when I was about 15. I bought the master key to the school off the head of school, so I could get in anywhere and take what I wanted. Anyway, so one day I rather overcooked it, and suddenly I realised I'm floating on the ceiling, looking down at my sort of rather crumpled up in a peculiar position body on the floor, with my sort of head virtually stuck under a table and stuff. And for a microsecond, I remembered that I was studying for O-levels, and then bam, suddenly I'm on the ceiling. It's still me. Nothing's changed except I'm floating on the ceiling, looking down at my body and thinking, wow. And all my troubles have gone.
Wow.
Totally free. And then something really unfortunate happened. Suddenly I snapped back into my body again. And it was quite a disappointment, actually, compared to what it was like not being in my body.
It's a powerful OBA, that. Very powerful out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
To go back as well, before when you were talking about pesticides and things like that, do you think that is could be one of the main causes of cancer in the world now at the moment?
Well,
or a main benefactor anyway.
I mean, the really dangerous things in the world are the agricultural herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, so on. frequencies if you happen to be radiosensitive. A good example is there was this woman who had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis so badly that her hands shook so much that she couldn't even go to the toilet by herself. She couldn't get dressed. And she's only in her 30s. So she was on the drugs for the MS, as she would be for the rest of her life, according to the doctors. But it wasn't MS, it was her plasma television.
Wow.
6 weeks after they'd taken the plasma television away, all the shaking stops.
Oh,
Wow.
Right? Some people are electrosensitive. Some people have that same electrosensitivity to mobile phones, just a few. Some to cordless phones. And it could be any electronic device that's not been wired quite properly. Some people have big problems with running machines. Some people have them with infrared saunas. Anything. If you hear something making a buzzing sound, making a hum, now that's creating a frequency. Is that frequency good or bad? Anything that hums, you've got to be, I'm not sure I want to be close to that. I've got a voltage meter for the body, so you can measure voltage in the body. And if I had you hold it, and I have you stand near, let's say, a gang of 3-pin plugs that are all on, you're probably inducing maybe 15, maybe 20 volts running through your body.
Wow.
Just induction. You don't even have to touch it, just going near it. So some people are sensitive to that, other people aren't. Other people do it, you notice nothing. But what if you're in a flat and you haven't got a plasma television, but the people next door have on the other side of your head,
Yeah.
Oh wow.
and suddenly you've been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's or something, and are you sure? People are being diagnosed with stuff, and there can be misdiagnosis. There'll be lots of tests where somebody who's got a known disease goes to 8 different doctors and gets several different diagnoses. There's no guarantee that doctors are going to get it right when they say this is your diagnosis. And what does diagnosis mean? Well, this is my definition, Clive De Carle's definition. Gnosis from the Greek is to know. Agnosis is not to know. So diagnosis is 2 people not knowing.
Well, what an interesting point that, by the way. I love that. Do you have any theories about why that's the case, or why certain people are affected by mobile phones and things like that, electrical devices?
No, other than that we're all different. And
Yeah, just because I was thinking in my head, because we know that. One thing that worries me at the moment is how 5G is coming around the corner. And there's rumours that I think there was a biologist who was doing research on the direction of where certain birds were flying and the way ants were coming into season and going out of season. And there's rumours that because of our electronic devices, we're actually impacting the lives of insects and things like that. So I was actually thinking maybe and the reason why it affects us as well, maybe we are some sort of, we have cycles in our body that we don't understand, cycles that we have to honour, many different cycles really, but maybe that's affecting our deeper cycles that we don't understand in our body. If we are electromagnetic beings, which a lot of people have stated in the past. I think Tesla said that we are all electromagnetic beings. What if that's why? Because we have our own our own individual frequencies, and our own individual frequencies can be affected, just like the birds can, the bees can, by a mobile phone or electrical device.
So you don't want a mobile phone anywhere near you.
Yeah.
If you can park it in another room, that would
What about on Wi-Fi? On airplane mode?
Yeah. Well, even the battery's putting out a
cool.
huge field, actually. Which is more dangerous, a mobile phone or a cordless phone? Well, I always thought it would be a mobile phone.
Yeah.
No, it's the cordless phone is more dangerous, because that only gives out a whack of power every now and then to see if anybody's around, whereas the cordless one is broadcasting 24 hours a day. So if your baby or you or whatever have got the base station near your head while you're sleeping, you just don't want that. It's seriously dodgy. People just don't realise. And we just had a fluorescent light bulb break, and people don't know that most fluorescent light bulbs are filled with mercury. And if you break one, let's say you just put it in the rubbish and it goes in the landfill. Okay, now there's mercury seeping down into the water table. How long does mercury last? Well, I don't know what the half-life is, but it's probably almost forever. So mercury's not like other toxins. With some toxins, gets in your body, it meets a few cells, it kills them maybe, but it gets burnt up and then you excrete it out. Not with mercury. You get a little piece of mercury in you, it kills one cell, but it's not weakened by that. It's never weakened, really. It'll carry on killing cells until you excrete it. But can you excrete it?
Wow.
There are a lot of autistic children who have a lot of problems excreting heavy metals. And let me give you an example. I used to do hair mineral analysis at one point. Now I do other methods. But let's say you've got 2 children come in, and you've got to guess who's the autistic one. Now there's one child who's got very high mercury in the hair. The other child's got very low mercury in the hair. I'll tell you which one's the autistic one. It's the one with the low mercury in the hair, because we're all mercury poisoned from coal-fired power stations, a million reasons. So if you spot somebody who's actually got low mercury in the hair, they're the poor excretors. They can't get rid of it, so it's stored up in their body, damaging them. So with autistic children, if you take steps to get the toxic metals out, and there are various other stages, but that's one of the big ones.
Is there any foods that can help that? The process of like absorption of mercury, like excrete out of the body?
The thing is that to get toxins out, a lot of people say, well, look, there are 3 basic pathways the liver has: detox 1, detox 2, detox 3. But there are other people who say, well, actually, really, strictly speaking, you could say there are 5 pathways, because you can mobilize mercury out of a cell into the bloodstream, say, but unless you can then get it out from there, it just makes you feel worse and goes back in again where it started. So detoxification has to be done intelligently, and it's usually important to get people strong first before the detoxification. But I mean, everybody's different. But it is really worth examining what's going on, I think, with autism, because what is the reason for autism? And it's growing at an alarming rate. I mean, in America, they say, I don't know, in 30 years' time, half the children in America will be autistic if it carries on growing at this rate. I'm not sure that those numbers are exactly right, but there are other people who say, well, look, in a few years' time, because now, 60% of Americans are on drugs, 25% of all women are on antidepressants.
Scary statistics.
The children are on Ritalin, which is like a synthetic cocaine variant, type of amphetamine. So they say that, look, in a few years' time, everybody, you will be in bed looking after the patient next to you, because everybody's going to be ill and there's going to be nobody left. Yeah. So something has to change.
Be building more hospitals and houses then, won't they?
Well, who's going to do the building? Everybody will be too ill.
The robots.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The robots, of course. So I got very interested in autism when I got particularly interested when it appeared there was things you could do about it. I've just done a second interview with a woman called Kerry Rivera, who wrote the book Reversing the Symptoms Known as Autism. And what happened, I think, with her son in 2004, 2005, something like that, her son was 10 by this point, severely autistic, and she realized what she had to do. So she takes him off all grains, so that's no rice, no wheat, no grains at all, and all dairy. That left one thing that he would eat, which was chips, French fries. So for about 3 weeks, they feed him French fries. After 3 days on nothing but French fries, he starts speaking, because the grains and the dairy had been inflaming his brain, making it unable for him to talk. 3 days off the grains and the dairy, he's talking. Took 10 days to get him on a bit of chicken, so he's on chicken and chips. And after 3 weeks, they managed to get him off the chips.
So do you think the brain itself is wanting to start the recovery process, but we are hampering it through our diet choices?
Well, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
You look at your ancestors, and they either died in childbirth or around childbirth, or they lived into their 80s, 90s. You go to any graveyard, you can see it. The government puts both figures together and say, you're living longer, everybody used to die at 45. Well,
bullshit.
Bullshit. So, as I say, it's the children who I think need the most attention paying to, because the older somebody with autism gets, the more difficult it becomes. So if you are the parent of somebody who's autistic, or somebody who's autistic, or they've got ADD or ADHD and so on, there is a cause, and the causes generally are toxic metal poisoning, probably from a vaccination or from a pesticide, herbicide, chemical poisoning in one way or another, toxic metal poisoning. So to get that out, you need to change the diet. There are many ways to get rid of parasites. Remember that in the past, it doesn't matter which culture pretty much you came from, fasting and deworming were normal. You deworm all the cattle and all the livestock, all the children and yourselves. Once a year, there'd be a fast and a detox, right? And they'd use herbs. Traditional parasite killers would be things like black walnut, wormwood, hence the name, wormwood, cloves. There are a number of famous dewormer, deparasite agents that have been used in history. I mean, when the Japanese eat raw fish, they have raw ginger with it. Because ginger in big quantities would be a pretty good thing to kill the parasites in fish. But we've lost that, like we've lost fermented foods. Nobody has real fermented foods anymore. Everything's pasteurized, and people are getting ill because of modern foods and modern drugs and modern chemicals. And I think that all the answers to farming are known about. The biodynamic farmers are in perfect place to teach everybody how to do it. The permaculture farmers are in a great place to tell people how to do it. There is people, I can't remember the name of the person at the moment, there's a great TED talk about this guy who reforested 8 different regions of burnt out land where if you put in a TED talk about it, you'll find it. And he studied for 20 years to work out, his name is Smith, and how to rebuild a rainforest. And he basically shows you how he did it, really simple. Put a big ring of trees around the edge to break the wind. Within 3 years, he'd employed hundreds of people and dropped the temperature of the entire region 10 degrees. In 3 years, he'd put it right. Another example, Willy Schmitz, his name is. Another example is from Estonia. In Estonia, 2 people thought of a project which they called Country Cleanup. You can watch Country Cleanup on YouTube. So there are 1.3 million, I think, population of Estonia, and they managed to persuade 50,000 of those people to come out and clean the whole country up. What had happened in the Soviet rule, people had just dumped all their rubbish in the forest. They'd dumped the fridges, they wouldn't have dumped the fridges because fridges didn't go wrong up until the Western people got rid of Freon and made them go wrong. You used to, when I was young, you could go to any scrapyard you liked, take a fridge, plug it in, it would work because they were made to last. Right? Anyway, they went to Google and said, look, there's so much rubbish in the forests. Google Maps had just come out at this point, and Google Maps said, we'll map the forest, we'll map the rubbish, tell you exactly where it is. They persuaded the president of the country, they persuaded business leaders and people to volunteer, lorries and all the cleanup equipment. And so 50,000 people came out. Now, 50,000 people out of 1.3 million population, we're 70 million population? That would be more like 1 million people coming out. 1 million people on one day could make a big difference. I mean, imagine, for instance, 1 million people planted cherry trees, cherry seeds, walnut seeds, apricot seeds, peach seeds, lots of food. 1 million people could plant 100, you could have free food everywhere in 3 years or a few years' time. It takes a while to grow a tree, but
even an hour, just an hour.
So in 5 hours, these guys cleared up the whole of Estonia, right? The government reckoned it would have taken 2.5 years or something like that. But it's a fantastic example of people power, the fact that actually, if you've got something that's emotive enough to get people off the chairs doing something, that it can be done. Because everybody wants to change the world, but nobody's got any idea how, and they make the mistake of going on a march. So 1 million people go on a march, everybody knows it's a waste of time, they'll lie about the numbers that were there, nothing will happen. If those 1 million people planted food, you would have to ask their permission, but if you went to a supermarket like Deathco and you said, can we, apologise about my lisp, I'll try and say it properly, Deathco, and with their permission, you dug up the car parks and planted fruit and nut trees everywhere with big signs saying, don't bother to come in, just help yourself, it's all free, would we be unhappy about it? If down a wide high street, instead of planting trees that don't bear fruit, because the council doesn't dare, I think, plant fruit-bearing trees, because if they did, if somebody slipped on an apricot, they'd be sued. So they've dug up deliberately. They dig up fruit trees, my understanding. The fact is, it doesn't suit industry for us to eat for free. In America, in some states, you can't even collect your own water anymore.
That's scary, that. How you can't even have access to a local spring.
Well, it's insane. Roof water, in some states, you're not allowed to collect your own roof water because you don't own the water. Don't be silly.
Own the water. Or the air.
Or the land.
No, you don't own yourself, actually. You're a slave because you pay most of, assuming one pays taxes, who does one pay it to exactly?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good question.
And what do they spend it on?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not the roads.
Yeah, we definitely know that. So that's probably. Do you think that's a good place to wrap up? Because obviously you need to be for your next speech. I think at 1:30 you said, didn't you? So I'll give you enough time now. But thank you so much, by the way, so much more. And 1,000,000% this has got to happen again because I've got a million questions that I want to ask you. So thank you so much for.
That's fine. Let me just say one more thing briefly. I have started an organisation called Secret Health Club.
Mm-hmm.
SecretHealthClub.com.
We'll put that in the show notes as well and stuff.
And it's members only, but it doesn't necessarily cost anything to join. And there are lots of advantages to joining a club. You can do things in a club you can't do in the real world, and it's a way for like-minded people to get the information that needs sharing, and there's tons of it.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.